He doesn't know what he's missing, does he?
I know, I know.
Red vein in it. I've got the common mode, and it's starting off with my bag.
They can move them around, can't they?
Really nice.
Oh, look. Oh, they grow on top of one. That's fantastic.
Hard to get any. I grow a lot of bromeliads and springwood. It's no problem.
Yeah, he makes them more colourful. I love it.
Oh.
And you won't ever read that. You'll hear all the time bromeliads hate frost. Light frost, I love it.
Wow.
Moderate,
Yeah.
no, look, not so good.
Yeah.
More than a decade, and that's directly in reach. Same as this succulent there.
Right.
That's in very wet soil there. And same as that, so light frost, yeah. Moderate frost is probably no good.
Yeah.
Ray Henderson. Ray Henderson. I used to be nothing to do that.
These are just all your photographs.
Yeah, all basically $15 the bromeliads. Yeah.
It doesn't grow where you're...
They're not done.
Yeah, well, I remember when we did
Once they're quite effortless, once you put them in, you don't have to worry too much about them. But half of mine, I've only got about 2.
It's been all right up until the last thing.
Yeah, it's been gradually going on.
This is a bit of paper.
Mobiles? Yeah, I like that.
I've got 2. Bus actually. Bad way. Oh wow. Yeah.
That's interesting, the way it turns bronzy. That's supposed to be chocolate, or is that the lime green?
I'd buy one of those. See, that's just the new.
It's got a
Flowers are sharp as well.
yeah, just put your finger. You do. I just think that. I thought, oh, says me right. That the cutting. Oh, careful it bites. Well,
There's lots of things living in there.
Killed it. It suddenly appeared. Exciting.
Agave regina.
Beautiful.
So well because of the climate here.
Bow tie. And I always thought it wouldn't get through the winter. And then it,
Yeah, no, this one's not a flavour. I had that the other day. I went out right there. I was from here to hot pants away, and he couldn't even move.
Well, mind you, our last summer, we were fine.
Yeah, some people don't like it.
so I learned, you've always got to listen to what the gardeners tell you, otherwise you'll be disappointed. Now, what happened in the beginning here was it was just a patch of grass with a few ugly shrubs shrubed up to the outside. Really, it was a bit of a blank canvas. So that was lucky because then I didn't have to take an awful lot away. But there was a couple of downsides, and I didn't really get to learn about those until later, which is what gardening's like, even if you've or learned a fair bit about it. So, for instance, what we were saying before, I thought, oh, well, I'm 10 minutes walk to the beach. That's surely then it will be a very modified minimum winter overnight temperature. But no. So by the second season, I still got down to 6 or 7. I didn't want 6 or 7. I didn't want 6 or 7. I wanted more like maybe 15 or 16. Because I had in mind a lot of zingiberales and other ginger plants that would like to grow in that kind of climate. And what they like is semi-shade, like underneath the bottle brush outside, but warm shade. That's the hard part with that kind of planting. And you also need to put it in before Christmas, so October, November. And then it's got much more of a chance before you come to the cool nights again. And some of the planting here I'll show you that is like that. And I was just saying before to a few people at home, last winter, did anyone get beneath 5 for winter?
Oh yeah.
Everyone? Everyone. And below naught?
No.
Close to it.
But unusual, would be unusual. Unusual for you? Okay. So I would say so long as it doesn't get regularly beneath naught, then we're all on the same page here, even though that I'm so much closer to the ocean. Because it's warm, temperate, coastal, frost-free, and really, what a lumpy name, but that's the truth of it. I call it cool subtropics now. Because people have hounded me for, what is this garden you make, Peter? Well, we want to know, we want to put a a name on it. I never really knew what to tell them. I'd just say, well, look, it's warm temperate coastal frost free. And they'd say, what? And I'd say, I've got to think of a better name. It's cool subtropics.
Cool
Meaning that
subtropics.
I'd never get down to Nord, even though some of you would, but it would be fairly unusual. Once it gets regularly below Nord and you get a harsh frost, you'd have to be in a place like Bendigo or somewhere on the interior. And that's really the weakest link for as far as what range of planting you can put in without it dying before the end of July. So we're all on the same page here on this deck. We're all doing cool subtropics, I would suggest. It's just that you're probably slightly at the cooler end. So getting back to the beginning, it's nearly 4 years since I moved here, so it's about 3 and a bit years since the garden went in. And
So you've done all of this?
Yes.
Three and a bit years?
yeah, but I really do say, I stand by it, if by the end of the second season, so that's 18 months to 2 years, your garden's not showing, then there must be something wrong with your selection, because knowing that that's the case, and unless you're on acreage, 5 acres and more, or 2 acres, if you're on an average suburban block like this, which is becoming more and more rare these days, you have to be careful about the selection that you make, knowing that by the end of the second season, or certainly the third, you'll have a congestion problem with a connected canopy that will cast gloom permanently beneath everything else. And that will change your garden, not just a little bit, but in a wholesale way, and you'll have to throw out where you won't get the chance to.
Well, you
because
don't
it'll
throw
be
out
dead.
plants.
It'll be dead. You won't get a chance to throw it out because it'll be dead before you get a chance. So the light levels will be so low that the poor plant will just, I can't photosynthesize. I'm dying. I'm going to be dead, and very quickly when that gloom comes over, because a lot of that planting relied on at least semi-shade, and it's not even getting that. So now's a good time of year to come around and look at the garden with me, because I'm just on the verge. I wanted to wait till you guys came to see it, and then I'm going to cut the hell out of this garden. It's going to be reduced to half. Yes, because if I don't, then I'm going to have this congestion problem with even taller and taller. Even though the tallest plants I guess I selected for weren't going to exceed maybe 4 metres. So I had that in mind, but when they're growing at fairly close centres, they tend to push each other up. So you get an extra metre. So I know that I'll have to cut. Not that I want to give everything a flat top, I just want to cut it to shape. So it's a round top that we're doing, but it will be a boy cut, it won't be a girl cut. Because I'm not talking about snipping a few things off like that, and that'll do. I want to be giving it a reduction so that then we're cutting into the second year wood at least. And that when you do that, you need to probably help your garden by the end of winter, coming into early spring with a bit more resource, because you're expecting it to kick, but it pulls on the ground, and maybe there's not enough nutrient there to do it with. So, bags of cow manure are always a good idea. So come with me and we'll have a look at.
No, we're all like, yeah.
If you wanted a sub, or if what you want and you're working in this kind of scale, don't want things more than a couple of metres or 3 metres really, because they'll all push on each other and you won't have that congestion. So they're called Barlaria, lavender
Had one of
lace.
those.
It's just the basic cristata, but it's this two-tone flower which is quite pretty, very pretty I think. Cutting a separation between other things, so that then you're not gardening now, you're gardening in another 5 months' time. So you're always looking ahead. So this is a bun kind of shape at the
Concealia.
Chinese hat. So that's the lutea, the chartreuse version. It's got a much more open, lax habit that's slightly pendulous. I would probably take at least all of those cones after it's gone over, back to about half. I like it because it's just got a little umbrella shape. And you can easily grow things underneath because it's a broadleaf, but it's quite sparse.
What's the name again, Peter? Just so.
Rothica, R-O-T-H-E-C-A.
Okay, got it.
All right, so that Tipicina. There's another one over there. The two hibiscus Ruth Wilcott, the Brugmansia aurea, the Phimosia umbellata that's red down in the red flower. All these things are all too not enough to reduce them to half, but I'll take the top third off and make a round top. And sometimes when you do that, you might make a decision really I haven't got room for 2 hibiscus. One of them's got to go. So tough love. Tough love. To be
You've got a rose in the middle of it.
Yeah. Well, the reason for that is that that's north. So there's north that way. Except for the garage, but it's just enough to keep it ticking over. It's an old Alistair Clark rain leaf. But eventually, if I don't cut garden, no, because now the sun's all been taken away. You could go to shade things that still flower, but the bandwidth that you'll select from is much more narrow, and the flowering wouldn't be very proliferous. It would be a season, and once you get the sun, you can have longer flowering seasons in the ground. But that's what they're like. So by Christmas, then I'll chop it out, because once the flower comes, it's endomorphic and it'll die. So hoping that will implode by Christmas. If it doesn't, I'll just hibiscus on the other side with the lean on it. That's really there as a nurse plant for the permanent planting, because those are fairly short-lived and often get borer. But annoyingly, my one seems to be resistant.
That's what happens, yes.
But I still want it gone for the winter, because in there, with the broad leaves, like the pairs of leaves in the dark glossy green, that's Tabernae montana. And Tabernae montana is the permanent plant that will grow up into this space. But without which, as a nurse plant, these other taller things kept the hot sun off to stop it from burning. It actually grows into a perfect little umbrella without even touching it. No cutting or anything. And has a very sweet and perfumed white cruciform flower. Very beautiful, that Tabernae montana. There's a heliconia. Yes, going up this gate. Heliconia, pendular waxy red, has never flowered. So if it doesn't cough up by Christmas, it's out. Because I've given it 3 seasons. You can go that way, or you can decide. Well, colleagues tell me that they've had theirs for maybe 7 or 8 years and they've flowered itself. But because we're much further down latitude-wise than say northern rivers, it's just going to take longer. So it's not, I don't want to sound like a fascist totally when it comes to making room in your garden. But if it doesn't perform, I'm very much of, well, it's just taking up space. But then, if I had it for 9 years though, so you'll have to decide whether you're willing to wait. And really, the leaf, the gold vein, that's Sanchesia.
Oh yeah, okay.
Speciosa.
And this
Fantasia speciosa.
That's Phimosia umbellata, the Mexican mallow. Tickets to lunch.
They put out some young flags.
You can see there's one flower up there. That way, it's not very much maintenance just to take the tips off. And then you've got bushy from
Justicia.
I like gardens you can poke around in.
Yeah.
David will be down in a second.
Okay.
Oh, look at this. And Esther. Look at this one, Esther.
I brought one years ago. I brought one.
Well, the guy's right down.
Yes.
Isn't it? Yes. Very. I like it more than flowers.
That's being paid for.
That's dichondra, isn't it? Is that dichondra? Yeah. It's a very different colour.
The fruit. For us, so we keep it down.
So
all Syningas are from Brazil. There's about 60 species, I think, from memory.
Yeah, you've got to try it, don't you?
This
Sometimes
one-
it does, sometimes it doesn't.
And even if you dig them out, you
So
know,
that's a Syninga, or a Syningia, depending on your pronunciation. It's in the African violet family, and there are about 60 species, or thereabouts. It may not be quite 60, but this is one of the what they call unifoliate. So it has a bulb on it, or a tuber they call it. They grow out of sheer rock faces. So so you'll just see this lump growing out of the crack of a rock. And as I said, it's unifoliate, so it normally would just have a stem with one leaf about a foot long, a bit over a foot long, and then one unformed leaf on the opposing side. It's Syninga pancas, and it's only recently been discovered. So what they do, or what happens when you discover something, is they give it what they call a holding name. So it's been assigned a name pancas, so all the nerds like myself can all communicate with each other and understand what we're talking about. And then the botanists and the taxonomists will go over it and measure it and stretch it and all this sort of carry on. And they'll send all the information to Kew in London, and they will suggest a name, and Kew will decide whether it complies with the Latin laws. And if it complies with the laws, then it will be given a name, and it will be rechanged to whatever its name's going to be. Now this one was given to me. There's a lady at Balcolin up the hill here a bit further. Name's Ruth Coulson, and she is the Syninga Queen of Australia. She's been breeding Syningas for 30 years. Is known all over the world for breeding. And her name comes up in the literature and up on the computer quite a bit. I was visiting her one day and she was giving me some Syningas, and I spotted it with the one leaf and admired it, and she said to me, "Oh look, I wouldn't inflict that silly looking thing on anybody." She said it can take 7 years to flower. So anyway, I convinced her to give it to me, and then it dropped its leaf, and about midway through summer it dropped its leaf, and I thought I was going to sleep because a lot of them are deciduous, or herbaceous I should say. And then all of a sudden you see this thing coming up, and I thought, oh, it's getting a new leaf. No, it's going to flower. So
Frankie?
well, I sent her an email and said, look, if you want it back, I'm more than happy to send it back to you. And she said, no, she actually had another one. But it's the only time you're ever going to see one is on the computer.
Thank you.
So that Gesneriad group of plants are one of the interests that pretty much, so I have more so than Blake does, but so I've been collecting Syningas, and hence the reason I joined this club in Newcastle up in the Hunter. A lot of people rub. Again, Ruth had it out her back door and gave me some cuttings of it. A beautiful thing. So that's that.
All right.
Columbias don't normally look like that, do they?
Columbias don't look very much like that at all. Again, it was given to me by one of the club members just as a cutting last year, about this time last year. It's Columnia sanguinea. Sanguinea means blood red in Latin, and it has these patches of red under it. Some of them can have a lot of red, and some of them can only have a little bit. The leaves are almost fully grown. They grow to about a foot, and that's the flower. That's probably the bud, but the flowers are only about that big. They're very insignificant. But
So almost the size of a normal Columbia flower.
the hybrids tend to have huge flowers on them. A lot of them, some of them species have got big flowers, but a lot of them are bred for the big flowers. But most Syningas most Columnias, I should say, are epiphytes. This is terrestrial. But one of the problems that a lot of the club members have is they're on domestic backyards and they don't necessarily have a room for something that's a metre by a metre. So the lady that gave it to me said it lives in her laundry. It takes up most of the laundry, but she hasn't got the heart to throw it out. So she gave me a couple of cuttings of it at one meeting. She came in because she comes in Sydney, and she said, I think you might, probably the more typical Syninga that you may or may not, probably may not, but that's a little miniature. It's an unnamed hybrid. It's probably got musicola or one of those. There are about 3 or 4 really miniature Syningas species. and they literally don't. One of them would grow no bigger than the base of that pot, fully grown. Oh, it's a tiny, tiny little thing.
That's fine.
But that's bred from one of those guys. It's flowered most of the summer. A lot of the club members grow them under lights like they do African violets. This one just lives up in the greenhouse with the rest of them, does its thing. But it's a pretty little thing. And that is a species African violet. It's the flower's a bit distorted, and I'm not 100% certain why. It may have might, I don't know. I'll take it one day to one of the clubs and get them to have a look at it. But there are only 9 species of African violets. All of them are from Africa, hence the name African violets. There are a couple of them that trail, and I have seen images of this whole curtain of this African violet growing near a waterfall. Some of them grow at altitude, not a lot. Most of them grow down on the coast, hence they like the warmth. All the 200,000, whatever it is, some enormous figure of hybrid African violets are all derived from one single species. So it must be fairly genetically unstable because there's an enormous variation in them. But this is a little species. I'm not a big fan of African violets. On a personal level, they look like a variation on a theme to me. But species definitely, you know. But that's what that is. But that is a. Hold it that way might be better. That is actually a metanilla. So it's in the Tibouchina family. It's there are I think there are 2 or 3 native metanilla species. They're all found in North Queensland. This one's from the Philippines.
Is that a metanilla?
It is.
Oh.
It is. We do grow one. There's one in the bush house here called Dolichophylla, and it has this long lanceolate leaf. Dolichophylla tends to grow horizontally. Now, whatever this one is, I don't have the vaguest idea. It has the Dolichophylla leaf, but it grows into a true shrub. It came from a friend of ours up on the north coast. He had this scungy-looking plant at the back door, growing up with his long, skinny leaves, and we said, "Oh, can we have a cutting?" He said, "Yeah, of course you can."
So you grow that where?
Well, that's what I've been doing. I know now.
Yeah, but there's only one, so
Very nice.
many of, so I don't really do any. There's not many people do. Not so spiky.
You think you can put in?
Axel
Very
blade.
savage.
So Tibouchina.
Have you got any of those for sale?
It's a way. It is one. No, you can't have, you know.
Yeah, that's another. That'll be a good.
They're worth hunting down. They're beautiful things. Named after someone, Dombey, or I'd have to look it up again. But yeah, there's that one. That's one. I bought that as
Dombey.
called elegans.
Dombey or
One
elegans.
down behind the back here.
Ficus demeropsis from New Guinea.
New Guinea.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
There's the fruit there.
I saw the fruit. Yeah. Is that edible or?
I would say so.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
No, just dark.
Oh, look at that. My goodness, look at that.
Is that one of those with those little...
Gets little white flowers, yeah.
Frangipani family.
Frangipani family, yeah.